The night is quiet, but the walls whisper. There's something breathing behind the padded doors. I took the job for the paycheck. Now I pray for sunrise. Follow the rules, or something else will find you first. The ad was simple. Night guard needed for confidential psychiatric facility in northern Michigan. Must be discreet. Must follow protocol. Generous pay. I didn't think much of it. I was broke, recently fired, and sleeping in my cousin's basement. I needed something fast, and the promise of $40 per hour under the table made my desperation override my instincts. The interview was a blur, held in a rust-stained office with a man who never blinked and only asked one question. Can you follow rules without question? I nodded. That was all it took. They flew me out that same week. The asylum sat deep in the woods, surrounded by black pine and a 6-foot electric fence. There was no name on the building, just rusted gates and reinforced steel doors. It had been abandoned in the 80s, I'd read, after a fire killed 12 patients and 2 staff. But apparently, it was reopened privately. What did that even mean? The staff was minimal. During the day, a skeleton crew of doctors and nurses worked quietly. At night, just me and the rules. They handed me a crumpled paper when I arrived, titled, Night Protocol, Do Not Deviate. Do not enter room 313. The intercom may come on randomly. Ignore any voices asking for help. Lights flicker in hall. Be between 2 to 2:15 a.m. If they stay off longer than that, leave the building. If you hear footsteps behind you, do not turn around unless you're in front of a mirror. At exactly 3:33 a.m., someone will knock on the front doors. Do not answer. Patrol every floor once an hour, but skip the basement after midnight. If you find a door open that was locked, close it and count to 10 before walking away. If you see someone in a patient gown with no ID badge, run. I thought it was some kind of sick hazing ritual. Until 1:57 a.m. That was the first night. Hall B's lights began to flicker. I stood at the start of the hallway, watching the fluorescent tubes stutter like dying stars. My walkie crackled. Then came the voice. Help! Help me! It was faint. A woman's voice. It came through the intercom, garbled like it was underwater. Please, don't leave me here. Room 313. I remembered Rule 2. Ignore any voices asking for help. But something deep in me, it clawed. What if it was real? What if someone was trapped in room 313? I moved down the corridor, hesitating. In front of that very door, room 313. The door had no window, no number anymore. Just a dark, soot-scarred surface, like it had survived a fire. I reached for the knob, cold, metallic, and humming under my fingers. Then I saw a dot on the ceiling. Above the door, something was crawling. Thin limbs. Human. Pale. It didn't move like a person. It moved like smoke and bones. And it was watching me. I backed away, heart slamming in my chest. Lights flickered out completely. Total darkness swallowed the hall. By the time I reached the main lobby, my hands were shaking. I looked at my watch. 2:14 a.m. The lights flickered back on. I gasped like I'd been underwater for a year. The rest of the night passed in eerie silence. But I didn't sleep when I got back to the staff bunk. I just sat, replaying it all in my head. Was it a hallucination? Was it part of the test? Why did it feel so real? The second night, I broke another rule. The knock came at 3:33 a.m. Right on cue. It echoed through the asylum like thunder. Boom, boom, boom. I froze behind the security desk. But then, I heard a voice. My mom's voice. Danny, open the door. Honey, I hadn't heard her voice in 10 years. Not since she died. Open the door, sweetheart. It's cold out here. My fingers twitched. The security monitors glitched. The cameras all cut to static. Don't make me knock again, Danny. I almost did it. My hand was on the handle. Then I heard scratching, like nails, on the other side of the steel, scraping downward. Slowly, painfully. I backed away. After a minute, the knocking stopped, but a message appeared on the monitor. Good job. Don't do it again. I was being watched. I didn't know by who or what, but someone or something was making sure I followed the rules. The asylum wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and I had just passed its first test. The monitor blinked back to life after the knock stopped. Grainy black and white footage returned one frame at a time, as if the cameras had to recover from whatever had tried to interfere. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting for something, anything, to show itself outside the front doors. But they were empty. The lot outside was covered in snow and shadows. Nothing but still trees beyond the rusted fence. That I checked my watch. 3:39 a.m. Still nearly 3 hours to go before my shift ended, and I already felt like I was about to crack. Sleep deprivation? A prank? Hallucination? Those were things I tried to tell myself, but they crumbled every time I remembered the voice. My mother's voice. It had said things only she could have known. That lullaby. That nickname. Danny Boy. I rubbed my eyes until my vision blurred and wandered the halls again, flashlight trembling in my hand. Every footstep echoed like it didn't belong to me. The air smelled like ammonia and something deeper, something old. Mold? Decay? Regret? I passed the rec room. It hadn't been used in decades. Dusty chessboards, rotted couches, a cracked television bolted to the wall. But someone, or something, had been there. The chairs were rearranged in a perfect circle, and sitting in the center of the circle was a patient gown, still warm. I froze. Rule 8 echoed in my head. If you see someone in a patient gown with no ID badge, run. There was no one wearing it now. But the fact it was there, freshly laid out, sent my heart slamming into my ribs. I didn't touch it. I didn't go near it. But as I turned to leave, the chessboard to my left clattered loudly. That a piece had moved. A black pawn slid forward on its own. I backed out of the room, nearly slipping, and didn't stop walking until I was back near the elevator. The door stood closed. The elevator hadn't worked since I'd arrived, supposedly. The tech told me it had been shut down due to structural issues. Only stairs between floors. But then why was the button blinking? A faint ding echoed down the corridor. The elevator was on the move. I swallowed hard. The button panel showed it was going from the basement up to the ground floor. But I hadn't called IT. In a one had. I reached for my flashlight again, gripped it like a weapon. The air grew colder as the elevator rose. My breath fogged in front of me. Each second stretched into a nightmare. Ding! The elevator doors creaked open. Empty. Or so it seemed. But the light inside flickered like Halby had earlier. Dim, uneven, unstable. I knew what the rules said. Skip the basement after midnight. But the elevator had come from the basement, and I had to know. Had to see if someone, or something, was down there. I needed answers. Proof. Something I could hold in my hands when I quit this place in the morning and ran screaming to whatever news station would listen. I stepped inside. The doors closed like a coffin lid. And then, darkness, not just dim, total, black. The emergency light didn't kick in. My flashlight sputtered out. I hit the button panel. Nothing. Not even the soft glow of floor numbers. Just void. And then came the sound. Breathing. Not mine. Low. Wet. Labored. I wasn't alone. Something was in the elevator with me. I pressed against the wall, barely able to breathe, heart hammering so loud I thought it would give me away. I didn't move. Didn't dare. Then I heard it whisper. A voice inches from my ear. You don't belong here. The elevator dropped, not smoothly, like it fell. My body lifted slightly, gravity pulling at my chest. And then, slam. IT landed with a metallic groan. The doors opened. Basement level. I stepped out, legs numb, body shaking. A thick fog covered the floor here, just ankle high, but cold enough to soak through my boots instantly. I saw movement to the left, a shadow disappearing around the corner. No footsteps, just gliding. The walls here were different, older, covered in peeling paint, red stains, handprints. There were doors here, too, unmarked. Steel bars like prison cells. I passed one and saw a shape inside. A woman, head shaved, eyes hollow, smiling wide enough that her lips bled at the corners. She was mouthing something. I stepped closer. She said, without sound, "Don't turn around." I froze. I felt the air shift behind me. Something was right behind me, breathing, waiting. I backed away from the door slowly and walked forward without turning. The woman inside the cell raised one bloody finger and pointed down the hallway toward the last door at the end. It was slightly open. A faint red glow spilled from inside. It was room 313. But this was the basement. That couldn't be right. Room 313 was on the second floor. I walked toward it anyway, like something else had grabbed my legs and was moving them for me. Like I wasn't in charge of my body anymore. As I approached, I saw something written on the floor in front of the door. "Welcome back, Daniel." My full name. Only my mom called me that. The door opened slowly. The red light grew brighter that I saw a figure inside, hunched in the corner. Arms too long, skin pulled tight. Its head tilted up, and then it grinned. Rows of teeth. Teeth on teeth. A voice screamed in my head, not in my ears, in my mind. Words that weren't English. Words that didn't belong in any language I knew. Words that made my bones rattle and my ears bleed. I turned and ran, faster than I thought possible. Back to the elevator, back to the world above. When I slammed the ground floor button, the doors closed just as that thing lunged toward the shaft, hitting the steel with a sound like a crowbar hitting flesh. The ride up felt like a lifetime. When I returned to the lobby, the clock read 4:42 a.m. N01 was there, no sound. The gown in the rec room was gone. The security monitors showed static again. The paper with the rules was burning slowly on the desk. And on the blank screen in the middle, 6 words appeared, written in red. You broke Rule 6. Countdown begun. You think you're alone in the dark? You're never alone here, not even in your mind. Every rule is a lock on a door best left sealed. But I've broken one, and now it's waking up. After I saw those 6 words on the monitor, you broke Rule 6. Countdown begun. Something inside me shattered. I couldn't move, couldn't think. I stared at the screen, expecting more text to appear, but the words just stayed there, pulsing like a heartbeat. And that burning smell. I turned to see the paper with the rules was half ash, like it had ignited from within. It wasn't just a warning. It was a sentence. Rule 6. Skip the basement after midnight. I had gone there. I had seen something. And now, something had seen me. I stumbled out of the security room, desperate for air. My breath felt trapped inside my ribs like something was holding it down. I made it to the front doors and tried them. They were locked. Not just electronically, but something beyond that. The steel had melted at the edges, fused to the frame like it had been sealed by hellfire. I wasn't getting out. Not until the end of shift, if I lived that long. The rest of the night passed in a blur of anxiety. Every step I took echoed like a scream. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not watched through cameras, but watched through the walls. At exactly 5:01 a.m. I heard it. A sound like chains being dragged, not down the halls, above me. On the ceiling. I tilted my head up slowly and saw the paint cracking along the corners, like something was moving inside the structure. Something large, heavy, crawling. It followed me all the way to the staff room, where I collapsed into a chair and waited for the SUN. At 6 a.m. sharp, the facility lit up. I blinked as if waking from a dream, but the fear didn't fade. Dr. Kellerman, the head physician, strolled in like nothing had happened. Mid-50s, pale as chalk, eyes always hidden behind black lenses. Eventful night. He asked me. I didn't answer. He handed me a fresh printed copy of the rule sheet. Not a word about the burned one, like it never existed, but one line was added at the bottom in red ink. Do not speak of the basement. I should have quit. I should have run, but I didn't. Part of it was fear, but another part, maybe the more dangerous part, was curiosity. What was this place? What did they keep locked up beneath the ground? Why me? The next night, I came in early. The facility looked different in the late daylight. Not comforting, just quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that builds just before a scream. At 6:47 p.m., I sat down in the security office and reviewed footage from the previous nights. Only black and white static during the incidents. But around 3:33 a.m., just before, the knock at the front door, one camera in Hall C glitched into color. Only for a second. I froze the frame. It showed a man standing at the far end of the hallway, wearing a patient gown, no shoes. His head was bowed, his limbs bent at odd angles like he'd been dislocated and reassembled. Zooming in, I saw his face. It was my face, mouth sewn shut, eyes missing. My blood turned to ice. The glitch lasted only a frame. Then static again. I looked over at the printed rule sheet, still warm from the copier. The red line at the bottom now read, do not speak of the basement. Do not trust your own face. The rules were updating. In real time. They were alive. That night's patrols started like the last. Quiet dread, flickering lights, invisible footsteps always just a few beats behind me. I avoided Hall B. I avoided the rec room. I avoided room 313. But one place kept calling me back. The chapel. Yes, there was a chapel in this asylum. Built into the second floor. Old wooden pews. Stained glass windows now covered in black plastic. A rotten pulpit. No crosses. Just a symbol above the altar I didn't recognize. An eye with nails around it. No one ever mentioned the chapel. Not even in the rules. And that made it more dangerous than anything else that I entered the room just after. 2:00 a.m. The smell of sulfur was overwhelming. The pews were filled with mannequins. Where they came from, I had no idea. All wearing patient gowns. All facing forward. All whispering. The sound came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Confess. They chanted in raspy voices. Confess. Confess. I turned to run, and the doors slammed shut behind me. A shadow rose behind the altar, not a person. A mass. Like oil and smoke and screams formed a shape. Red eyes blinked into existence, vertical like a snake's. Daniel. It hissed. How do you know my name? I shouted. It didn't answer. Just pointed toward the back wall of the chapel. I turned slowly. Another door. One I hadn't noticed before. Carved into the wood were 3 words, not yet dead. I reached for the handle, then stopped. A voice whispered behind me. If you open that, you'll never leave this place. I spun around. No one there. When I turned back, the door was gone. Vanished into the wall like it had never existed. I ran out the second the main doors creaked open again, heart pounding in my throat. By the time 6 a.m. arrived, I was barely hanging on. Dr. Kellerman greeted me with his usual smirk. He handed me my pay envelope, then asked, calmly, like he was asking about the weather, "Have you seen your reflection lately?" I paused, shook my head. He smiled wider. "Good. Don't." I looked down. Inside the envelope was more than cash. There was a key. Old, rusted, labeled, level -3. I never knew a level -3 even existed. Beneath the basement, he leaned close and whispered, "You're doing well, Daniel. Most don't make it this far. The asylum, it likes you." That night, the rules updated again. A new final line, hand-scrawled in blood-red ink. The countdown is real. You have 5 nights left, or you become a patient. There's something buried beneath the asylum's roots. Older than concrete, hungrier than madness. It doesn't kill you right away. It waits until you open the right door. I arrived at dusk, dragging my feet, eyes hollow, veins buzzing, with caffeine and panic. I hadn't slept. Not really. Not since that key appeared in my pay envelope. I stared at it for hours in my apartment, wondering if I should toss it into the river, but I didn't. Why? Because some sick part of me wanted to know. Because every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of that door in the chapel wall. The one that vanished. The one that whispered not yet dead. Every night, it came closer. Every night, it opened wider. I knew something now. The asylum wasn't haunted. It was hungry. And it had chosen me at exactly 6 p.m., I reported in. The rules sheet was waiting for me on the desk. No changes. But someone, or something, had circled Rule 4. Rule 4. If you hear someone knocking on a mirror, do not answer. I didn't know what that meant yet, but it set my stomach crawling. The air was thick tonight. The kind of thick that made light feel heavier, slower. The hallways breathed with me. No, against me. Like the walls were contracting every time I inhaled. As always, the cameras started to flicker after 1 a.m. At 1:37 a.m., I noticed a figure in the east courtyard. Camera 7. A woman in a patient gown. Long black hair. Her arms outstretched. Just standing in the snow. She wasn't supposed to be there. No patients were ever left outside after dusk. I went to check manually, flashlight in hand. Key in my pocket. I passed the east wing windows. I could still see her. Pale. Motionless. Eyes. Black as oil. But when I reached the courtyard door and opened it, she was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Just a trail of burned snow, like something hot had melted its way across the ground. I turned to go back inside. And that's when I saw it. The mirror. Someone had wheeled a tall, antique mirror into the hallway. It wasn't there when I'd walked past before. The surface was fogged, but I saw my own reflection. Only, it wasn't me. It was moving slightly out of sync, breathing faster than I was, smiling when I wasn't. And then it knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. A quiet, deliberate tapping. Rule 4 screamed in my brain. Do not answer. I stepped away, but my reflection didn't. It pressed its hand to the glass, smiled wider, mouth stretched far too long. I backed away further, Its image stayed fixed, like it was watching something over my shoulder that I turned. Nothing. When I looked back, the mirror was empty. Not just void of a reflection, it was now a window. Through the mirror, I saw a hallway I'd never been to, lined with padded doors, all marked with red Roman numerals. I heard whispering, screaming, laughter that didn't belong to any human throat. Then a face slammed into the other side of the glass, that MY face, mouth sewn shut, screaming without sound, eyes filled with insects. The mirror exploded that I hit the ground, just as glass flew past me like bullets. When I stood up, there was no mirror, no fragments, no blood. Nothing. As if it had never been there. But my hand was bleeding. A single line across my palm, a perfect Roman numeral I carved into my skin. I staggered back to the security room, heart hammering, vision swimming. The monitors were off, every single one. Except camera 13. It showed a new location. Level -3. A hallway of rusted steel doors. No lights, just the dull, blinking outline of a figure crawling slowly toward the lens, and above it, written in faint red letters, "Patient Zero is waking up." My throat tightened. This was real. Whatever the asylum was built on, whatever they buried beneath the floors, it was waking up, and it wanted me to come down. I knew what the key in my pocket was for now. I waited until 3:33 a.m. Then I took the service elevator. Yes, the same one that had gone black 2 nights ago, and used the key on the override slot. It turned. The elevator began to descend past the basement. The button read, -3. Level -3 smelled like iron, rotting wood, and wet earth. The lights barely worked. The entire floor buzzed with static. Every shadow moved. I stepped into a hallway that didn't feel man-made. The walls were stone, not concrete. Older than the building. Ancient. Even. I passed old cells. Some had carvings, not in English. Symbols that burned my eyes to look at. One door had tally marks carved into it. So many they covered the walls. And ceiling. At the end of the hallway, I saw it. Patient Zero's chamber. A vault-like door. Cold mist rolled from beneath it. I stepped forward. But before I could touch the handle, I heard something behind me. Footsteps. But not on the floor. On the ceiling. I turned my flashlight upward and saw a man crawling upside down across the ceiling. Like a spider. Mouth sewn shut. Eyes white. And he wasn't alone. Behind him, more figures. Some crawling. Some twitching. Some headless. All wearing patient gowns. All with no ID. Rule 8 echoed in my brain again. If you see someone in a gown with no badge, run. I ran, but not back to the elevator. The door to Patient Zero's chamber was now open, and it was the only place left to go. Inside the chamber, everything changed. The space was impossibly large, cathedral-like. A black stone altar stood at the center, and above it, suspended in midair, was a cocoon made of stitched human skin. It pulsed. Something inside it moved. I approached against every instinct in my body. Then a voice whispered, "Daniel, you are the last rule." I turned. Dr. Kellerman stood at the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, face calm. "This place chose you. It always does. One every 20 years. He pointed to the cocoon. "That's Patient Zero. It feeds on time, on broken minds, on curiosity. And now, it's almost ready to wake up." I shook my head. "What the hell is this place?" He smiled. "This asylum isn't for the insane. It's a lock, and you just found the keyhole." I backed away, but the ground shifted beneath me. The cocoon cracked. From within, something opened its eyes. A million eyes. I woke up in my apartment. Sweating, shaking, clothes soaked in blood. The level -3 key was gone, but a new copy of the rules was waiting on my kitchen table. This time, handwritten. Only one line. "There is no fourth night unless you stop the awakening." They told me to follow the rules. But some places don't want order, they want worship. You can't escape what's buried in your blood. Because sometimes, you're the monster they've been waiting for. I didn't go to work on the fourth night. I couldn't. Not after what I saw under level -3. Not after the cocoon. Not after I watched something older than madness crack open beneath the asylum. But the asylum came to me anyway. When I opened my eyes at 11:59 p.m., because sleep no longer existed for me, I was already there. Not in my apartment. I in the security office, fully dressed. Lights flickering. Rule sheet freshly printed and pinned to the wall. Only one rule remained, a new one, typed in blood-red ink. If you make it to the fourth night, don't run. Take your place. I stood slowly. My knees wobbled like I was learning to walk for the first time. Something was inside me, moving, rearranging. The veins in my arms looked darker than they should, thicker, crawling like worms beneath the skin. The monitors weren't just showing hallways anymore. They were showing memories. MYOW and .my childhood bedroom, wallpaper peeling. My father yelling from the hallway. A mirror cracking in slow motion. I changed the channel. Now I saw the chapel again. But the pews were full, not mannequins this time. People, all of them staring at the pulpit. Waiting for me. My reflection on the center screen blinked. Then smiled. It spoke, soundless but clear. It's time, Daniel. The asylum is ready. I stepped into the hallway. The lights dimmed behind me. My footsteps made no sound. The air tasted like ash. The door to the recreation room was open. I never saw anyone use it before. Now it was full. Patients I'd never seen. Or maybe people who were never let out. Their mouths were stitched, eyes wide with terror. All of them were rocking back and forth, in sync with a metronome ticking from the center of the room. One of them turned to me and spoke through their sewn lips. Somehow, I heard the words, "You were born here, Daniel, just like the others." I backed away, heart thrashing against my ribs. No, that couldn't be true. But when I ran my hand over the back of my neck, there was a scar I didn't remember, an old one, a surgical one. I made it to the chapel again by 2:33 a.m. It was glowing now. Literally. The eye symbol above the altar was lit with red light, veins of energy pulsing outward into the walls like arteries. And on the altar, a book made of human skin, bound with bone. It opened as I approached. Pages flipped on their own, revealing lines of text. Each one was a rule. Each one had my name beneath it. Rule 1. Never look through the mirror after 3 a.m. Daniel. Rule 4. If someone knocks on the mirror, don't answer. Daniel. Rule 6. Never enter the basement after midnight. Daniele wasn't just following the rules, I was writing them. The asylum had used me as a scribe, as a witness, as an architect of its twisted ritual. I was never meant to survive, I was meant to document the descent. Suddenly, the floor cracked. The altar split open and patient zero emerged, no longer in a cocoon. It stood now, towering, malformed, its limbs stitched from a dozen different bodies. Mouthless, but the scream that filled the chapel came from it. Vibrating through my bones, It raised its hand, and the walls peeled back, revealing every part of the asylum. All the rooms, all the patients, all the rules, like a giant dollhouse exposed to a god. And above it all, a mirror in the sky, reflecting me. But this version of me had no mouth, and his eyes were glowing. Patient zero stepped toward me. I lifted my hand, and he did the same. I realized the truth. I was never guarding the asylum. I was guarding him, because he is me. Or the part of me that the asylum needed to grow. A seed of madness it had planted when I was just a child. When I was a patient here, before I was released, before I was made to forget. The final rule burned itself into my skull. If you complete the fourth night, your shift never ends. I tried to run, but the halls kept shifting. Time warped. I passed clocks where the hands spun in reverse. I saw versions of myself on every monitor, some screaming, some laughing, one hanging from the ceiling fan. The elevator door opened by itself. Inside, Dr. Kellerman stood waiting. No glasses now. His eyes weren't human. They were black voids. "You've done beautifully, Daniel," he said. "Now take your place." He pointed to the panel inside the elevator. A new button had appeared. "Infinity, infinity." I stepped back. "No," I whispered. "I'm not doing this." Kellerman sighed. "You already did." He held up the clipboard he always carried. It had my name on it, with one final note beneath it. "Promoted. Status, rule maker." He shoved the clipboard into my chest. It burned my hands like fire. When I dropped it, I saw my reflection on the metal elevator wall behind him. Only now. I had no mouth. 6:00 a.m. never came. Time froze at 5:59 a.m. Outside the asylum, the world moved on. People went to work, laughed, slept, but inside, Daniel the night guard patrols the halls forever now. New guards will come. New rules will be printed. Some will survive. Most won't. And I know We will be there, watching from the mirrors, whispering from the walls, writing the next rule, because this asylum doesn't need protection. It needs devotion. And now, the next rule is ready to be written. If you're reading this, you've already been chosen.